Hi, I'm Karen Eley. Welcome to our recorded webinar, The Changing Landscape of Women and Money. Firstly, I want to thank you for your donation to Catherine House. It's one of my favourite charities and it helps women who've had to leave their homes with or without children. And like the women you'll hear from today, our speakers, Catherine House are all about empowering these women to stand up and take back their lives. You can learn more about them at their website, www.catherinehouse.org.au, and that's Catherine with a C. I now want to acknowledge you for investing your time to watch this webinar. It tells me you're the type of woman who wants to be the best version of herself, whether that's in your career or business, or as a leader in your family, or someone who wants to make a difference in their community. I'm so excited for what you're about to learn. In a minute, I'm going to be joined by 4 fabulous women and we'll be discussing all things money, mindsets and careers. We'll be sharing with you why now is a perfect time to be rethinking the way you live and go about your day-to-day life and how that impacts your finances. So first up, I'll be interviewing 4 speakers on their topics of expertise and experience. And then Deborah Price from the Money Coaching Institute has joined us all the way from Northern California, much warmer over there than it is here, by the way, and she's going to interview me. And the final 45 minutes of the webinar, at the end of those questions and answer interview, all 5 of us are coming together for a panel discussion, which I promise is really worth waiting for. So let's get started. Hi, Donny. How are you?
I'm really well, Karen. Yourself?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thank you for joining us as part of this live seminar. I was wondering if we could start off explaining to the women what has been your success in terms of networking and how it's helped your business and your professional career.
Look, I think one of the key skills that you can have in your success in whether you're owning your own business or you're working for somebody else and you're looking for a career in management, leadership, executive, even on boards, is to have a healthy network. And you probably know that men invest a lot of time in networking and always have, and that's because they understand the importance of networking. And you'll note that I said invest. So a lot of women will talk to me all around the country, will talk to me around the reason why they don't network is they don't have time. Well, that's an excuse because we all have the same amount of time. It's 168 hours a week, Karen. And if men can do it, so can we. But we will have excuses like we need to be putting our head down, our bum up and working with our team to achieve for the organisation. We'll have the excuse that we've got family and children and husbands and everything else, but we need to make time, because if people don't know you exist and don't know what your personal brand is and don't know what you stand for and what and building credibility, then you're not on anyone's radar. So when they're thinking about people for business opportunities, promotions, putting them on their boards or putting them into an executive position, if you're not on their radar, you're not going to be thought of. And a lot of people wouldn't consider you being serious in your career because they never see you. They never hear you. And if you're relying just on someone else talking about you to others, that is one way I know that you can see where opportunities are, but it's not a good thing to rely on. So if women just start by having an objective to network at least once a quarter, if they're not doing any networking at all, it's a good place to start. And when women ask me what would be the best ways to look at where my networks are, and I say, well, find out from your target market, where do they go to network? And so as an example, my target market is board directors, CEOs, executives, chairs of boards. Where do they go? They go to the Australian Institute of Company Directors Governance Summit at the beginning of every year, and at the end of every year they go to their annual conference, their annual dinner. So that's where I am. So that's an easy place to start. But I guess the biggest hint would be always go to to wherever you're going, it's an event or a seminar or a boardroom lunch or whatever it is, with an objective in mind. What do you actually want to achieve from that piece of networking?
That's great, Donny. So what I'm hearing from you is that visibility is really important. So that's something that I took away from that. You did touch...
Karen, that is a good point. Women tend to be invisible. They are spending more time with their team than with engaging their networks and establishing relationships. So if that means you're invisible and men are visible because they are standing around the water cooler talking to the CEO, that's making them visible. So do you want to be, ask yourself the question, do you want to be invisible, therefore invisible to opportunities? So it's a good point.
Yeah, thanks, Donny. You touched on men. I was curious as to what you think is the difference between men networking and women networking, and who does it better? Is there something that we can learn from each other in regards to the way that we do network with each other?
Well, in short, men do it better because they invest time. But if women take away the cringe factor about, well, I don't like networking for lots of different reasons, and look at it as relationship building and expanding their networks through relationships, that's where women do it really well, because they form deeper, long-lasting relationships. If you ask a woman about a relationship, they'll be able to tell you about their personal life, their kids, what their kids do, what they do at work, how well they operate at work. Whereas males tend to not have such deep relationships. I know of men who have known each other for 20 years and still don't know their wives' names. So yeah, when we spend the time networking, that's why we're good at it if we do it. And I guess that's why, as I said, men invest the time. They know the importance of networking. And I know that if you speak to successful women and they talk about how did they get promoted, how did they get into boards, most of them will say, it's all through my networks, most of them.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Donny, would you mind explaining to the audience about the success you've received directly through your networking?
Well, I guess it's what I've already described. Like I've always been a networker. Even when I was very young, I understood the importance of internal and external networking. And then when I started my banking career, I was in a male-dominated industry sector. There are no females in management when I joined. And the only way I got known around the bank was my internal networking. And I spend a lot of time, and then my clients, obviously external clients. I then went into recruitment, and it was because of all of those networks that I had established in banking that I had a ready-made network to go to build a client base. And then the reason I got promoted into different organisations after that, even in government, a very senior executive role in government, was because of my networks. People knew who I was, knew what I stood for, because that's really important as well. So know who you are, know where your passion areas are, know what you believe in, and then ensure everyone else, and you're consistent with it. That's the really important thing. You're consistent with all of this, because it's no good showing up and be a chameleon to all the different networks, and then you're confusing your own personal brand. So it's really important to be consistent and to be authentic, be genuine in who you are and what you stand for, and then people will talk about you. So I probably, my first board opportunity, my first what I call lead into my board career was what was then known as SA Grade, a marketing organisation for the state. And that came through a professional network from our local advertiser, paper and media outlet. And then my first paying call came out of a networking opportunity from within government. So, and I know that my most recent major board that I got put onto the ABC was through networks.
Which is amazing. That's a very well-esteemed board to be on, and it's wonderful to hear that it was directly related to your network. So you're an inspiration.
And obviously, Karen, you know, you can't just expect that your networks are going to be the reason why you get. I mean, you have to have had a track record of achievements and as I said earlier, be consistent, be genuine, help others, add value, whatever. So I'm not saying that you just get there because you build a network. You've got, you know, we all know women have to have it all. It's just that it's very helpful to be well networked and well credentialed, and that's why you'll receive or get opportunities.
Yeah, and I love the advice that you gave for women that haven't networked to date, and after listening to you, I'm sure they're very inspired to start making those connections, to do one networking function a quarter. So I think that's fantastic advice. So
let me tell you where I'm at, Karen. I network every week. There's very few days in a week that I'm not networking. So I'm just saying start from once a quarter, but that's not enough. And it's also, don't just go out and network and think you're done for the quarter. You've got to follow up the people you meet. You've got to engage. And the great thing about engagement these days is we can engage on social media. LinkedIn is a professional network for us. So you can touch base and keep each other informed, send each other articles, those sorts of things to keep those connections and relationships going. It doesn't always depend on a face-to-face, but equally, if you think you can grow extensive networks through a LinkedIn profile or a Facebook only, then you won't establish long-standing relationships that way either.
I think that's great advice, Donny. You meet someone, but then follow it up, you know, with sharing articles, with connecting with them on LinkedIn. And again, it comes back to that visibility, isn't it? Because having those follow-up connections, you're visible to them again. So I love that. So I'm curious to know, actually, what is your definition of networking? Because you said that you network very regularly. So it got me thinking about, well, what is networking to you?
So relationship building and maintaining those relationships. So for example, you and I, we've known each other many years. I can't rely on the fact that if someone asks you, who do you know with this skill set, this background, that I'm immediately going to come to mind. So I might ask you out for a coffee, maybe once every couple of months. So I've got a list, an influencers list, and the key influencers I'll keep in touch with more often than others, but I'll always keep in touch through maybe inviting them to an event or what. But if I really specifically want to network with a key influencer, I might invite them to a lunch or a breakfast every 6 months. But I'll keep in touch in other ways with them, but I'll make it very personal. So it can be as simple as having a cup of coffee or a chat over the phone. It's still networking. It's still keeping myself in the mind of others. It's like advertising. So Coca-Cola, which is the #1 recognized brand in the world, never stops advertising its product. And even though it's well recognized, if they stop advertising, and it's happened once where Pepsi took over as the #1 Coca-Cola or cola drink, was when they didn't think they needed to keep on advertising. So networking is putting yourself in front of people's minds that if there are any opportunities, they remember you. So it can be a phone call, sharing something on LinkedIn. inviting out for a coffee, inviting them to a particular event, something. It doesn't mean you always have to go to, you know, a 300, 400 person event. Sometimes it's a one-on-one networking opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic. Donny, when you answered that question, you spoke about a key influencer. Could you explain that a little bit to the women? What is a key influencer? How do you decide that someone is?
All right. So it's what's personal to you. So for example, I wanted to get on the Crows board a few years ago, and the key influencer there would be the CEO and the president and the board directors. So I had to look at who did I know that was on the board, and start by establishing relationships or re-establishing relationships with them. So because that was so important to me, I put them as in the top 10 of my key influencers. It might be, if you think of it like a segmenting a customer base, when you're in sales and marketing, and you segment your A customer, your B customer, and your C customer based maybe on profitability, then your A customers would be your key influencers. They'd be your A grade customers. And then you prioritize which one. You might have hundreds of them, so you need to prioritize which of those A grade customers, like my A grade clients, would be key influencers that would speak on my behalf to others, that would talk about me to others, that would put me forward for opportunities to others, that would recommend me for business. They'd be my key influencers that I would keep, and they, being key influencers, influence others and their decisions. So it's a bit like what I said earlier. If you sit around a board table and someone says, who do you know with this background and experience? All of those people sitting around that board are key influencers for someone else that's not sitting around that board, who will speak about them on their behalf. And because they're respected, they'll be listened to. And instead of doing a wider search, they'll go, well, give me the CVs of those 5 people you've just mentioned and we'll interview them. So it becomes a very closed shop. But we're all key influencers, so it works the other way. So it just means that whoever you've identified in your top 10, your top 20 are probably the ones you keep closest to you and in more contact with.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Donny. That's great advice. And I think what resonated for me then was those key influencers, or anyone that you're networking with, it's almost like you want them to be your advocate. So talk about you. Yeah, which is fantastic.
In a different language, we call them sponsors. They're your sponsors. So you have a mentor, a coach, and a sponsor, and your sponsor is your advocate. Yes.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Donny. So you've shared some amazing information. I've got some great takeouts and some actionable items, some really practical things that I can go and do, and I'm sure that the other women can take away and do as well. So thank you. Was there any one last piece of advice that you could give to the women out there in regards to networking?
If I put on one of your KPIs that networking was a major KPI on your job role, job description, board description, you would do it. So therefore I'm saying do it and start slowly, commit to once a quarter, once a month. And then when you realize the benefits of building and maintaining those networks, then do it more often, and do it well. Be genuine, turn up, be yourself, and always add value to the conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Donny. And re-quoting what you said, ladies, it's an investment. So I'd never looked at networking that way, but it's true. You invest that time in there and make those connections. So thank you again for your time, Donny. Very much appreciated. And we look forward to seeing you at the end on our panel for the questions and answers for any women that have got some specific questions for you.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Karen.
Great. Thanks, Donny. Bye.
Bye.
Well, good morning, Karen. Great
Good morning,
to see
Deborah.
you. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you. Obviously, we both come from the same field, both the practical financial and now more the behavioral side of money. And I want to have you share with our audience a bit about how we make financial decisions and the psychology of money. Karen, what does psychology have to do with money?
Okay, well, no one's entirely rational when it comes to money. And so what do I mean by this is that most of us don't budget, or we don't regularly put a portion of our money away for the future, even though we know we need to. And we all know we need a financial plan, but some of us put off doing it. And those that perhaps have a financial plan may not always stick to it. And there might be some of us that spend too much out of wanting instant gratification, or we spend too little out of fear and guilt. And for most of us, we feel shame around money, our money patterns and behaviours. So we all have a relationship with money that spans our entire life. And for some of us, it's a complex relationship. Money is, however, just simply a medium of exchange. We exchange money for the things or experiences that we want. And on the flip side, we trade our time and expertise to go to work and get paid money. So money has no meaning other than the meaning and emotions that we give it. And the thing is, our thoughts about money and our money beliefs create our financial results. So psychology and our financial mindsets have everything to do with money. And what I want to do now is share a theory with you created by Carl Jung. And Carl Jung is the founder of analytical psychology and has done a lot of great work in this area. And he explains in his work that when we go through life, we experience ourselves, not the world. Our relationship with the world is all internal. It's what we tell ourselves, that little voice in our head. And we all have the power as to how we want to experience the world and situations around us. And then the other thing he talks about is that the way that you think is unique to you, because we filter and distort through our own thoughts. Now, our perception and how we see the world is a reflection on us. And our opinion of things is actually in our control. So many of us have differing opinions about what we believe about money, what we believe about our ability to attract and keep money or grow money. And we have amazing brains, and this is basically how they work based on his theory. So there's an event, an external event happens to us, and then we give it a meaning. And most people believe the meaning that we give something is universal, in that we all think the same way. But we don't, because we have filters, and our filters are our values, beliefs, and attitudes. And our filters they develop from our conditioning. And what I mean by conditioning is the environment that we had within our family that we grew up in. And our brain filters in what we already know, or what we're familiar with, and what we experienced as children. And our beliefs determine what we see and don't see through these filters. And then our attitudes are the third filter. So do you have an attitude of gratitude and positivity, or an attitude of scarcity and not enough? And this is why our values, beliefs, and attitudes are so important, because whatever you experienced as a child created these values, beliefs, and attitudes. So when we have these filters applied to our brains, what it does is it deletes, distorts, and generalizes. And our brain is like a computer. It works on an automatic or unconscious filter. And what I mean by unconscious is that it's outside of our awareness. It's just like an autopilot happening. So an event happens, and if this event doesn't match what we're searching for unconsciously, our brain's going to remove it for us and then filter in all the things that matches what we've previously experienced in our childhood, because our brain is constantly seeking the familiar. So what you've had previously in your life, you're going to attract more of. So yeah, unfortunately, that's the way our brain settings work. And until we actually look at something like this model and have a conscious awareness, it will continue to happen. So if you're not happy with your current financial results, it's most likely that you'll need to upgrade your mindset around it. So when I mentioned delete, distort, and generalize, what do I mean by these? So when it comes to deletion, our brain has so much information coming in that it's impossible to process it all. So what happens is our brain filters it out. So I just want to give you an example of that. So if you just right now, all of you in the audience listening, just wiggle your toes or feel the fabric on your clothes, and just concentrate on your breathing for a second. See how you notice these things now. They were actually all there 5 minutes ago, but your brain filtered this information out and focused on what it thought was important. And hopefully that was listening to me. So that's that deletion process that our brain goes through. And then the second thing that it does is it distorts. So it doesn't exactly see things how they are. It sees your view of the event. It's like, when you have a conversation perhaps with a spouse or a family member or someone at work, and you were talking about something and you meant one thing about it, but they've distorted it to their own meaning and have made it mean something completely different. And this can sometimes be challenging with communication or where it breaks down. And then the third component of that delete, distort, and generalize is the generalization. So this is where we have thoughts that start with the words and using the language always, all, or never. So it could be something like, I never seem to get ahead financially. I just build up some savings and then something happens. Or the word all. So it could be something like, all wealthy people had to work really hard for their money, or all wealthy people are evil and did bad things to accumulate their money. And then the other one is always. So when you hear yourself or you're telling yourself and the sentence starts with always, all, or never, we know that you're generalizing, your brain's generalizing things. So you can see how our brain filters out so much information, through those sensations and what others think. So if you put that in the context of your money, it's working at deleting and distorting and generalizing things. So that's why it's really important that we actually have an awareness about what our values, beliefs, and mindsets are, and it all comes around to that psychology.
You hear me? Wow, so fascinating, Karen. I am always interested in learning more about our relationship with money. How do you think our own unique mindset around money is created?
Our mindsets are actually developed from our early years of life and are a result of our childhood conditioning, what it is that we learned from our parents. Because as 5-year-olds growing up, we're basically recording devices and absorb everything around us. So energy, emotions, behaviours and patterns. And when we were young, our parents told us about the Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, Father Christmas. But at some stage in our childhood, we discovered that they just aren't real. And we believed they weren't real. There's no fairy coming to our room at night and leaving us money for our teeth and taking them to some faraway land. Our parents just told us this made-up story. And when we were old enough, we didn't believe it anymore. And like the Easter Bunny, we were also told stories about our money, or we may have experienced or overheard our parents or caregivers talking about or observed how they related to money. But most of these stories were also made up or passed down from generation to generation and then landing and being installed in your mind. And the challenge is we can go through our life not actually opening our eyes to the fact that these observations from children actually weren't real. It's just something we decided to believe. It's our inner voice that we may or may not be aware of, which was developed at a really young age for emotional survival. Because as children, we need to fit in and belong with our family. So we often adopt the beliefs of our parents, which persist, often out of context, into our adulthood.
So can you share with us more about how we make these decisions about money?
Well, to do that, Deborah, what I might do is just take us on a quick tour of our brain and the anatomy of our brain. So neurological studies tell us that we have 3 brains in one, which have evolved over time. And the first brain is our physiological brain. So that's our primitive or reptilian brain. And its job is to keep us safe, keep us out of danger, and it operates in a survival and fear-based mode. So the physiological brain is responsible for all of our automatic routines, which over time we learn to do them without thinking about them. So if you think about, riding a bike or driving. So, I think we've all had the experience of when we get in a car and we need to go somewhere and we get there and we go, oh, we're here already. How do we get there? It's most likely that your primitive brain was doing most of the driving. And then our second brain is our emotional brain. And it senses the world through emotion and feelings. And it's where we store all of our memories. For example, something that you may not be conscious of, like a smell, can trigger an emotion that our conscious mind can't understand. So I'm sure there's a time that you can think of when you smelt something and it triggered an emotion, because your emotional brain processed this smell, retrieved it from a memory from your past and related it to the smell. And that triggered the emotion that was relevant to that experience that you had back in the past. But what we need to remember is that our feelings aren't facts and emotions aren't decision-making tools. And so this part of our brain is responsible for emotional decision-making. And they're ingrained reactions, patterns, and inner voices that are shaped from our experiences growing up. And the thing is, this is where we make about 70% of our decision-making comes from, is that emotional part of our brain. And then finally, our third brain is our thinking brain. And this is the last brain to form because during our earlier years, it hasn't quite fully developed yet, and it's not fully mature until puberty. This brain, the thinking brain, enables language, thought, reasoning, and planning. It's really grounded and rational and considers all the options available. So none of us have to be a neuroscientist to figure out that when decisions are formed using our thinking brain, they're more likely to lead to positive outcomes. And alternatively, think about decisions that are made with survival instincts or from past experiences in our emotional brain can quite often hold us back from our full financial potential or can trip us up when we're going along on the right track. So something I want to share with you is that you could actually try this, when you're making a decision, actually think and ask yourself the question, which brain am I using at the moment? Is it my physiological brain, my instinctual brain? Is it my emotional brain, or is it my thinking brain? Because being able to make financial decisions in particular from your thinking brain is going to give you a lot more positive result.
Undoubtedly. So this is such an interesting subject. Can you help us better understand how our money beliefs themselves determine our financial results? And how do we, in general, understand what our beliefs are?
Yeah, great question. So what we can do is, let's start by asking ourselves, what do we believe about money? And yeah, I get it's a big question, and most of us have never considered what our money beliefs are. But understanding your money beliefs can be achieved through self-awareness and taking an inward process. So walking through the most meaningful, positive and negative money experiences you've had in life is the starting process. And then by examining your family conditioning or your family environment growing up, what I mean by this is the messages that were installed into you at a young age by your parents or primary caregivers. And then looking for patterns, traits and values that you have around money, which were developed in those earlier years. And as you reflect on these memories, just ask yourself, what story does it tell? So are the patterns mainly positive and happy, or are they stressful or sad? And is your history around money, when you go back and look through your years, is it stable and consistent, or is it up and down roller coaster? And so once you've identified and actually gone inwards and acknowledged, you can actually begin the process of change and transformation. Because as I said earlier, whatever your financial mindset is actually giving you the results that you have right now.
So Karen, why do you believe that we have to do this inner work in order to get at the root of our patterns and our money beliefs?
I really think the effectiveness of reaching our financial goals are dependent on our own self-awareness and having a healthy relationship with money. You know, what you unconsciously tell yourself about money could be tripping you up. You know, when we're making decisions, we're not always in charge, especially when we're operating unconsciously. So sometimes we just need to get out of our own way because we block our own financial potential. And that's why financial literacy and knowledge is only half the solution. We really need to do the internal work on ourselves and shine a light on what we actually believe about money. Because the exciting news is that you can change your money mindset or belief system. You know, if the pattern of thinking that you have about money is associated with, you know, maybe challenging financial behaviors or financial stress or guilt or poverty, you can change those patterns to ones that are associated with abundance and wealth. And regardless of your starting point or your financial position now, you can quite literally rewire your brain for wealth, financial security, abundance, or whatever your money goal is. And rewiring your money beliefs that block you and block your financial potential can only lead to better financial choices. And it won't only create more balance in your life with money, but also with your relationships and your health and your well-being. So I think it's so important to do this work.
Undoubtedly. Wow. So you've shared so much of your wisdom with us today. I feel very honored to have this time with you, and I hope that our audience really listens deeply, because you have so much to offer. And I know that everyone who encounters you and works with you will feel that. So thank you for all your great work in the world, Karen.
My pleasure. I love any opportunity to share this great work. So thank you, Deborah.
You are so welcome. Okay.
Hi, Marissa. Thanks for joining us today. I'm really keen to hear about you talking about how women can take control of their debt and use leverage to achieve their dreams.
Thanks for having me, Karen.
Pleasure. So my first question to you is that we're all aware that having debt can cause some major stress for people. And I was wondering if you could perhaps just share with us the different types of debts that are around and whether or not we should be stressed about all of them or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has been shown that debt is a huge cause of financial stress. And with financial stress, that can impact so many areas of your life. It can impact your health, your relationships. So it's really important to be on top of your debt and feel comfortable with your debt to avoid that extra financial stress. So there are different types of debt, and there are some debt that is good debt, and there are some debt that's not so good debt, some bad debt. So what is important when it comes to debt is really understanding whether your debt is good debt or bad debt. And if it is bad debt, or even if it's good debt, having a debt management plan. So a strategy as to how you're going to manage that debt and how you're going to eventually pay that debt off. So when I talk about good debt and bad debt, to me, good debt is debt that you're using to accumulate income producing assets. So it might be debt, a loan that you've borrowed for the purchase of an investment property, or a loan that you've taken out for the purchase of some shares, for example. They're assets that are going to grow in value, that are going to help fund your future, and that debt is actually tax deductible. So it's good debt because it's actually making you more money in the future and building your wealth. Bad debt is everything else. So that includes credit cards, personal loans, car loans, afterpays, but it also includes your home loan within the home that you're living in. So basically, my word of advice is always to look to get rid of your bad debt first and have a really good debt management strategy in place where you really know how you're going to tackle that bad debt. And then once that bad debt is under control, you can start tackling your good debt.
Mm-hmm. Great. Marissa, could you share with us that debt management plan that you're talking about? What does that look like, or how can a woman create one of those for herself?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's just really about stripping it all back and really understanding what your current debt is. It's surprising how many people don't know what they actually owe. They might have been involved when they initially took out the loan, but do you actually know what your current loan balance is? Do you know what your current interest rates are? Do you know what your current repayment terms are? Are you paying interest only, or are you paying principal and interest? So establishing a really good debt management plan is really initially about understanding what is your debt, what debt do you actually have, and what are you paying for that debt, and then being strategic about how you're going to pay that off. So to do that, you also need to have a really clear grasp of your cash flow management. So you need to understand your income and expenses and understand how much money you potentially have to allocate towards reducing your debt on a regular basis. By doing that, understanding what debt you currently have, what you're paying for it, and how it works, combined with what you can actually afford to be contributing to your debt regularly, you can actually put a plan in place for how you're going to manage the debt and which debt you're going to prioritise paying off first. And I find that when you have a plan, it reduces the stress enormously because you feel like you're in control of it, even if it seems like a large amount of debt to you.
That's great, Marissa. Now, you mentioned what you're paying for your debts. What are some of the costs that we incur if we do have a mortgage or debts?
Absolutely. With mortgage, whenever you've got a home loan, an investment loan, any type of loan really, there's always an interest rate component. So the interest rate component is an interest that is normally calculated daily and charged monthly in most instances, and that is actually an interest amount that you're paying on a regular basis off of the amount that you owe. As well as the interest, you also have fees, and many loan products have different amounts of fees. Credit cards have different fees, but generally if they do attract fees, they're either going to be upfront fees or they're going to be ongoing fees. And if you do have ongoing fees, you want to make sure that you're only paying for loan products that are giving you, that you're only paying for features that you need. You know, so many people pay a higher interest rate or higher fees for features that actually they don't need, and in which case they're probably paying too much, and they probably could refinance or consolidate some debt into a different facility that is cheaper for them and will still give them everything they need and access to everything they need. So it's really about reviewing what are the actual features that you need in your loan products and how can you get those features for less cost. And it is a really competitive market out there. You know, banks are really fighting for business in all spaces, from home loans to credit cards. In every aspect, banks are fighting for business. So if you are willing to review your fees and review your interest rate, potentially you can save thousands of dollars each year on your debt.
That's a really good point, Marissa. And I think working with a lot of clients myself, they're not aware that they can actually go back and ask their lenders, like, what's the best rate that you can give me? Because a lot don't even think to do that. And just by asking the question, quite often they can get some really good outcomes. So thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. That. Unfortunately, Australian banks do not reward existing clients. They always give the best deals to the new clients. So they don't reward loyalty. So as a consumer, as a borrower, you need to proactively be requesting discounts on a regular basis, because whilst the loan that you set up initially might have been a really attractive loan at that time when you established it, over time, it will become less attractive, and over time, your rate will become less competitive. So, you know, a home loan or investment loan or any debt facility for that matter is something that you should be reviewing at least annually. And what I do recommend, I mean, hopefully the listeners have a great mortgage broker that they can actually do reviews with annually. But if you don't, you should be going back to your bank and you should be requesting better pricing. And if they don't come to the party with better pricing, then you should be willing to actually look at other options. Because if you can save, you know, $2,000 to $5,000 a year, I say it's better in your pocket than in the bank's pocket. Or potentially that money can be put towards paying down your debt faster. In any event, it's always best to make sure you save. So definitely debt facilities need to be reviewed at least annually. And definitely it's worth the exercise because there's lots of money that can be saved.
Yeah, we don't want to be leaving money on the table, especially if the banks are going to get it, I believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's great. I wasn't aware myself that they should be reviewed that regularly. So annually is that's really interesting.
We do annual reviews all the time for our clients. That's just part of our service, and we find that every single time we do it, we will definitely save the client money and be able to get them a better discount.
Wow, that's wonderful. Sounds like having a mortgage broker on your side is definitely a great thing to have for saving some money on your debts.
I think it does add a benefit, because when you're trying to negotiate with the bank as a consumer, direct with the bank, they don't perceive that there's a big risk that you're going to leave them. But as soon as a mortgage broker is involved, they perceive that there's a higher level of risk that this customer will move to another bank if we don't look after them. So, and because of the relationships that we have with the banks, we do have a higher level of negotiating power, and we do have strings that we can pull to help our clients. So I believe that mortgage brokers can help their clients negotiate better outcomes than potentially what people can do on their own with the banks directly.
Fantastic. Sounds like a mortgage broker is someone you definitely want on your support team. Marissa, I'd now like you to talk and share with our listeners a topic that I know that you're very passionate about, and that's using leverage to generate or create more wealth. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so passionate about people being proactive about building wealth for their future, so that they can actually have the future and the retirement that they want, and that they can have the freedom to choose how and when they want to retire. And in most people's situations, savings alone won't get them there. And also, the minimum superannuation guarantee that their employer's paying into their super also won't get them there. So the reality is, for most Australians to be able to have a future that they dream of, they really do need to find another way to build their wealth outside of what they can potentially save on a regular basis. And that's where the power of leverage comes in. So leverage is effectively borrowing money or using other people's money to build your own wealth. And one thing I love about leverage is that you can, like I said, you can use the bank's money to actually build your wealth faster and accelerate that growth of wealth. So for example, if it's in terms of an investment property, you can actually contribute a deposit, and your deposit might be 100,000, but you might be buying a property for 400,000 or 500,000, and the bank is actually funding the rest of that purchase price. But the great news about it is that the percentage of growth of that asset is happening on the full value of that asset, not just on your contribution, your deposit. So by doing that, by using that leverage, and by having a much larger asset than what you can afford with your own savings, you're accelerating your wealth building and your wealth generation, which will accelerate your plans to a better retirement in the future. And I guess when you combine the power of leverage with the power of compounding, and you see that, the more you can comfortably borrow in a safe environment, managing your debt, and the quicker you can accumulate your assets and the longer you can hold them for, the greater chance that you're going to have a wonderful retirement, which is filled with everything you dream of.
Wonderful. Now, I imagine that leveraging isn't possible for everybody. Could you share with us people that should be looking at leveraging? So what kind of things do they need to have in order with their own finances to be able to take advantage of this using other people's money strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, in order to leverage and use other people's money, you need to have three things, I would say. First one is that generally you need to have some form of equity in a property. So it might be equity in your home, and equity basically means that there's an amount, or there's a value, there's a portion of your property that is debt-free in a way. So banks are generally willing to lend maybe up to 90, in some cases 95% of the value of your property. If you only owe 60% against the value of your property, then there could be 20 to 30% of the value of your property that the bank would be willing to leverage against. And we could use that to actually then fund the deposit of another investment property, for example. So the first thing is the banks need security. The second thing they need borrowing capacity. So you need to have consistent and steady income to be able to prove to the bank that you can afford to fund future loans. Now, if you are taking out debt for an investment property or an investment portfolio, there is a possibility that we can use the rental income or the income coming in from those investments to also contribute to showing the bank that you can service that debt. But definitely the bank wants to know that you can afford the repayments in high risk situations. So even if you don't have a tenant, they want to know that you can still afford the repayments. The third thing is that you need a reasonable credit score. So most people don't realise how important credit score is, and it's becoming more and more important as time goes on, because now most applications are reviewed initially by a computer, and they basically calculate your credit score, and you could get an approval or decline based on your credit score. So protecting your credit score is really important. The way you protect your credit score is you make sure that you always keep on top of paying your bills on time, and you make sure that you avoid defaults, avoid late payments, things like that, because now people are getting penalised on their credit score by being more than 14 days late on a major repayment. So you can imagine, so basically they're the three things. You need equity, you need the ability to service, and you need a good credit score.
Marissa, I was lucky enough to hear you talk about credit scores a little while back, and I found it to be a real eye-opener, because I wasn't aware of the things that the banks are counting, and I think most of the general population out there aren't. Could you go into a bit more detail about a credit score, how someone can find out their own credit score, and what kind of things that they need to do? I know you shared a couple of things, but if they believe that they do have a poor credit score, are there ways or strategies that they can implement to make that more favourable when they're going for a loan?
Yeah, absolutely. Most people don't realise what a big role credit scoring plays, and it's so important to understand what your credit score is. So you can actually get a free copy of your credit report on the internet. It's mycreditfile.com.au. You can actually get a credit report from there for free for yourself. Once a year, I believe, you can download it. And you can actually see what your credit score shows, because a lot of people don't realise that there might be old defaults on there that they weren't even aware of. In some instances, we find that someone has a default on their credit report for a mobile phone plan that their son or daughter had many years ago that they didn't even realise there was bills outstanding for. So if you do find on your credit report that you actually got some defaults or some things there that you're not aware of, or that shouldn't be there, then there are actually experts that can help you to remove those or renegotiate those things off of your credit report. Moving forward, if you want to try and make sure that you put yourself in the best position, the way to improve your credit score is, like I said, make sure that you're meeting all your financial commitments on time. If you're not going to be able to meet your financial commitments on time, so if you're in a difficult position and you know that you're going to be late on a mortgage repayment, the best thing to do is to actually contact the bank before you're late and advise them that you're going to be late. Because as soon as you've advised them that you're going to be late on your payment, they can't mark against you on your credit report. So that's the best way to protect your credit report. So they will allow you to enter into a payment arrangement, and that won't be reported against you. But if you actually just go down the path of ignoring it and you're late and you miss repayments and you get, you basically end up spiraling, then that's obviously going to impact your credit score. The other thing that you can do to eliminate or improve your credit score is try and get rid of credit cards that you don't need, because they score quite badly on your credit score. Personal loans score quite badly, including car loans. But the things that probably score the worst are the payday lenders and interest-free terms. So when you go to a shop and you put a piece of furniture on interest-free, that scores really badly on a credit report. So those things should potentially be avoided if you're trying to improve your credit score.
Or I guess perhaps if you've got the ability to pay those out or get rid of them before actually applying for a loan.
Well, the thing is, even if you pay them out, it still shows on your credit report that you actually applied for them. Right. So not applying for them at all is the best option.
Yep.
Because the fact is your credit history lasts for a while. So generally speaking, the last 2 years worth of transactions are on your credit report at a minimum. And previous to that, they will see where you've applied for finance. If they see that you've been applying for finance for interest-free terms, the computer automatically makes the assumption that you didn't have the cash at that time to pay for that good, which means you've had to put it on credit. And it's quite an expensive form of credit. So the computer assumes that you're not as good at managing your money as the next person who doesn't have to do the interest-free terms. Now, in reality, that may not be the case. The case might be it was made a lot of sense to put it on interest-free terms, but from a computer credit scoring perspective, that will give you a negative points in the scoring system.
That's really important to know. And I just had another question. If using a broker such as yourself or someone from your business or another broker, are there ways that you can communicate with the bank around those credit scores to make them more favourable, or is it just a very hard line, that's the score and that's the score, or is there some flexibility there?
Yeah, look, definitely there's flexibility, and the most important thing is to be aware of any credit issues before you choose which lender to go with, because different lenders are different. You know, there are some lenders that are very black and white in terms of what they will accept and what they won't accept, and then there are other lenders that are very, very flexible, and then there's a whole range that are somewhere in the middle. So it's really important to basically be upfront with your mortgage broker about anything that you're aware of, and also to obtain a copy of your credit report, which your broker can probably do for you. We do that for our clients, where they can actually view it before you actually apply, so that if there are any surprises, we know about them before we apply for finance, because applying for finance is also another mark on your credit report. So you don't want to be doing that with the risk that you could get declined. So you want to make sure that whatever position you're presenting to the bank, that it is the true position and they're not going to find anything that we haven't told them about, and that we put it, that you choose a lender that will accept your history, your credit score and your history. And as long as we do that, then definitely you can get finance even if you've got poor credit history, and even if you've been bankrupt previously, you can still get finance. So it's not a matter of that limiting your ability to move forward. It's just a matter of being open and upfront and understanding what it is, and then understanding which lenders are going to be suitable to helping you achieve your goals.
Oh, that's great to hear. So you're not disadvantaged with as long as you're preparing and being ahead of the game. That's what I'm sort of hearing from you in terms of some of the things that you've spoken about. It's like, if you know that you're not going to be able to pay some bills, get on the forefront and contact them. And then again, before applying for a mortgage or some lending, actually look at your credit score and know what they're going to be looking at and get on the front foot with the bank. So they're really great tips, Marissa.
And I guess the other thing I'd like to point out is that if you do these things, and if you do have a good credit score, and if you do have good equity in your properties, and you do have a debt management plan, banks reward you with better interest rates because you've got more choice of lenders. So it's also a lot easier to negotiate better discounts for really good quality clients. So you will be rewarded for good behaviour when it comes to applying for finance. So that's not something I'd like to point out, because it is definitely something that happens.
It's almost like Christmas time. You could be on the Santa's naughty list or his good list, and we want to be on the good list. So
we want to be on the good list, yeah.
Well, it's good that banks, acknowledge that and reward, people that do have healthy habits, and there's still a second chance for those of us that don't. Marissa, just in closing, I was wondering if for the listeners out there that do have mortgages, do you have any tips or strategies for them that can help pay their mortgages off faster, or perhaps save some money, or any other advice that you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you that have mortgages, I'd really encourage you, if you haven't reviewed your rate in the last 12 months, please do so. So please get in touch with your mortgage broker or contact the bank and speak to the retention team and tell them that you're going to refinance, and see if you can get a better discount on your loan, because I'm sure that if you haven't reviewed your loan recently, then that's already going to be something that's going to save you some money instantly. So that's really important. The other thing I'd obviously say, as we've talked about, is have a debt management strategy in place where you actually have all of your debts listed and you know what they're costing you, and you actually have a plan as to how you're going to pay those off and reduce that debt over time. Now, you might have a strategy in the short term that you don't want to pay that debt off, and that's completely fine. But as long as you're actually proactively managing that, that is really important. The other thing, like I said earlier, is review your features and your flexibility of your loan products. You know, do you have an offset that you're not using, or do you need an offset account that you don't currently have? Make sure that your debt products are actually, that you're paying for exactly what you need and you're getting exactly what you need, and you're not paying for things that you don't need. So that's really important. So I guess, you know, they're probably my main tips, just to make sure that you're feeling really good about your debt and that it's not stressing you out, and that you know that you're on a good deal with what you're paying, and that you know that you can move forward comfortably with your debt levels and reduce them in time.
And I think that's really important. So if we can put those steps in place, it does reduce the stress and the anxiety around having debt and borrowing and looking at what, you know, is available to you. So I think the more information that you know and using those tips are really valuable. And I've picked up a lot, as I always do, from speaking with you, Marissa. And you know, what I've taken away is that there's a lot of money that can be saved by you know, employing the tips that you talk about. And you know, because I think, you know, not everyone finds finance and money as interesting as we do, and I get that, but it's about using your money in the most efficient way possible. So I'm not one for cutting out lattes, or, you know, not going to cafes or doing things that make you feel good, but it is about being smart and strategic about other areas where you can actually reduce your costs and use that to, as you either said, reduce more debt or build it towards your wealth creation, or, you know, have a bit of fun with it, or all three. So really appreciate the tips that you've shared with us today, Marissa.
Your home loan repayments, for most people, their largest expense. So if you can shave that by a really small amount, it makes a huge difference in your overall budget. So you get really big bang for buck in terms of getting your home loan repayments down lower. So yeah, definitely put that money towards something that's going to be more enjoyable.
Wonderful. So again, Marissa, thank you for your time. And I know you're going to be joining us at the end of the webinar for any questions that any women have. So we'll look forward to catching up with you then. Thanks, Marissa.
Karen. Okay,
all right. Bye. Hi, Aly. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Karen. It's great to be along. I'm looking forward to sharing. Fantastic.
So I know that you're going to today talk about, and this is a real tongue twister for me, so I hope I don't stuff it up. You're going to be talking about tax and budgeting tips and tricks. I got it right. Right.
Well done. I didn't do that so that you could fuddle over it.
So, Aly, could you perhaps share with us, firstly, the most important thing women should know about tax?
That it's not the be all and end all, and it's not all about tax. A lot of times I have people come to me saying, should I do this and should I not do this, based upon tax reasons? But tax shouldn't be your primary driver. The aim of the game is to legally minimise it as best we can, but to pay our fair share, but not to pay more than what we have to. And so really that's what a good tax accountant will do for you, is work through all of the things that, one, you need to know about tax, two, make sure that you're compliant, and three, minimising the tax that you have to pay. And some of the things that I look at from a decision-making point of view is that if somebody's looking to purchase an asset or do something within their business, you know, does it fit their why? Is it something that they need or want that has value? Do they have the cash and can they fund it? And if it ticks all those boxes, then we look at the tax outcome. But it shouldn't be the driver of any decision making.
I love that. I love that question that people can ask themselves, does it fit your why? That's amazing.
Yeah, and I always go back to that. Everything I work with in the businesses that I help with, I always ask about their why. It's the first thing I ask, because that should be the driver of every business decision that they make, and it brings you back home every single time, and it gives you that purpose. And tax is about that as well. Bringing it back to, well, does this even correlate to why we're doing what we're doing?
Wonderful. So, Aly, could you perhaps share with us some of your best tax tips?
Yes, love to, because I love tax. I'm a bit of a tax nerd. So structure is one of the most important things if you are setting up a business, and it's something that you should speak to a tax accountant about at the very, very beginning, because structure is so critically important. It actually impacts how much tax you pay and is the biggest factor in how much tax you pay. It's also important in relation to whether you have asset protection or not. It's also important in relation to cost. So structure, when you start, when you are growing or doing any type of change, you've got to check back in and make sure you've got the right structure, because the structure is actually what helps us with the tax planning. And there's so many different types of structures, like sole traders and partnerships and trusts and companies. The other component is, once you've got your structure, there's really two types of tax planning that you can do. One is around spending money. So a deduction, you've got the cash to actually spend. And once again, I always go back to the why and if you need it, etc. And then the second component of that is really, I guess, tinkering around the edges. I can assure you, I would have loved to have been a tax accountant in the 80s, because there was so much more that we could actually do. These days, it really is a bit of tinkering. So can you defer income? Can you bring forward expenses? Have you put as much as you can into super, so your 25,000, that's deductible? You know, all of those different types of things. You know, do you have assets that you aren't using anymore that you could write off? Do you have bad debts that you could claim? So all of those different types of things kind of filter into, I guess, tax planning.
That's great. Aly, I imagine there's a lot of people listening today that have had to restructure their working environment based on COVID and the restrictions. Are there any specific deductions or things that they should be aware of, or bring to the front of their mind when they're preparing their tax or getting ready for tax this financial year?
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's the home office rate. So the ATO, when COVID came out, said that there will now be a COVID-19 home office rate. And what that means is, from the 1st of March to the 30th of June, the ATO is saying, if you've been working from home legitimately, it's not just checking emails, like actually literally working from home, they're going to provide a rate which is 80 cents per hour. So if you track the number of hours that you're working from home, times that by 80 cents, that'll be the deduction that you can claim as the ATO COVID home office rate. And that includes all of the running expenses of that home office. It also includes phone and internet, which is quite separate from the home office rate that we're used to from the ATO. So certainly something to be mindful of, that if you have been working from home, just to put that one in your individual tax return, definitely.
That's a great one. Are there any other things that they should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think when you're going to look at tax, one of the really great things is around superannuation. Now, I'm not allowed to provide financial advice, but I can tell you that superannuation up to 25,000 is deductible, and it's a really great way to get money into super and invest. And as women, we don't have as much super as men, so I think it's incredibly important. In all of my women clients I talk to, I focus on super very heavily, because there's a tax deduction component for it, but you're also getting that benefit at the back end. So always making sure, if you do have that surplus cash, to try and put some money into super. Some other really good ones at the end of the year that you might want to look at is like your motor vehicle. If you use your motor vehicle, this isn't home office and home to office, office to home. It's outside of that. But you can claim a cents per kilometre rate, which is 68 cents per kilometre up to 5,000 kilometres. And all you need is a travel diary for that. There's also, in relation to, did you know that you can claim a handbag? If you
I
can
like
carry a laptop. I know, get the Gucci out. So only up to $300 though, so it's not a great handbag.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can actually claim that. Also, if there's a work-related uniform that's either protective or unique or distinctive in a particular industry, you can claim that along with any laundry or dry cleaning of that. Mentioned before around if you use your phone or computer or internet at home, you can claim a percentage of that. So you really just have to start thinking to yourself, what are the things that I pay for that really I need for business, and can I claim a portion of that? Because the aim of the game is to increase your deductions, decrease your taxable income, which therefore decreases your tax payable.
On those deductions, for our Australian viewers, we've obviously got about 2 weeks left before the end of the tax year, so it might be too late for this financial year, but are there ways that women or anyone listening really can record or keep track of those expenses that are deductible for them? Is there a great system or process that you're aware of?
Yeah, so in Australia, I know that the ATO has an app that you can download and actually record all of your expenses. They don't have access to it, but you can share that with your accountant. If you're in business, obviously you would have an accounting software that you would utilize, like a Xero, or just keeping everything in an electronic format in a box folder. And what the ATO really does like is, if you're going to claim home office or motor vehicle, just log down, even if it's on the notes on your phone, just jog down all of the details around, you know, what day it was, how many hours, that type of thing, so that there is some written evidence if they do come back and audit you. The likelihood is low, but you know, definitely important that you make sure that you're keeping track of all of that. But that ATO app is actually quite good.
Okay, that's great. We might put that in the notes, reference to that. Now, Aly, earlier on you were talking about if you're able to bring forward expenses into this financial year. Are there any common ones that perhaps women could be thinking about paying in the next couple of weeks before the end of the tax year in Australia?
Yeah, I think super, because it has to be paid, physically paid and banked into the super account before you get that deduction. At this time of year, people are really looking at if there's any assets that they can purchase. So there's that 150,000. So for a business, there's the 150,000 immediate asset write-off. So if you're in business and you are looking for a bit of a tax deduction and you're thinking, oh, I've got a little bit of extra cash, that's most probably a really good one to utilize. The other one is around, even at the end of the year, if you're in business, at the end of the year, if you haven't paid expenses, but you've got the invoice for it, you can actually claim that in that tax year if you have that invoice. So it's really just a matter of gathering all of those different types of things up. In relation to individuals, you know, like I said before, don't go out and spend lots of dollars. For an individual, you're only allowed up to $300 for any type of asset. So it's really quite limited. It's really more about understanding what you can claim as you go along.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So now you're going to share with us some of your budgeting tips.
Yes.
And I know we're not all fans of the word budget, so we can set that with spending plan if you feel more comfortable with that. But could you tell us, for those that are wanting to create a budget, where's the best place to start?
Keeping it simple. I have a lot of people come to me with these really complex Excel spreadsheets or, you know, software that they've used. And it really does depend. If it's for a business and you're budgeting, then maybe you do have to go to that further extent. If it's individual budgeting, it literally is writing down, you know, what income you have and what expenses you're paying, but being honest about that. You know, a lot of banks on their online platforms actually already have that spinning wheel where it shows you kind of which categories you're spending money on and how much money you're spending. So actually looking at it, number one, I think it's one of those things that we tend to shy away from and hide away from because we don't want to confront the reality. But I think it's really important. So the first step is to actually just acknowledge what your income and expenses are. and then try and categorize them. I'm a really big believer of the 50-30-20 rule. So so 50% for, you know, your needs, 30% for your wants, and 20% for your savings. Because I think if you acknowledge what each of those expenses are and you're categorizing them, you might actually find that you're putting a lot in wants and not in needs, and there's none in savings. And so it's about finding a goal and tracking to that goal, but just keeping an eye on it. And, you know, there are lots of different ways that you can do it, and there's lots of different apps that you can use. But I seriously go from my online banking and, you know, write out my income and expenses. But for me, it's about tracking it. It's about understanding it and being really conscious of every single decision I'm making, rather than it being, you know, a habitual thing. It's actually, I'm consciously choosing to spend money on this, and I know where it's going. So I think that from a budgeting point of view is actually really important, just to keep it simple, but to be conscious of it.
Yeah, I love that consciousness around money. Too many of us just out of, you know, patterns and behaviors just spend money and aren't even really aware of it. So just being conscious about it, actually putting some thought into, you know, where is this money going, giving every dollar a purpose and putting it in the places that it needs to go to achieve your goals is great. So
yeah, I love that every dollar has a purpose. That's really powerful. And, you know, I've had people come to me wanting, you know, help with a budget, and they've literally written out all of their expenses, and they think my job is to give them the income. Well, it's actually converse of that. This is what your income is. This is how you have to adjust your lifestyle. It's not about what you want anymore. We can't be entitled. It's about what we can afford and what we can achieve and save for.
Yeah, you're right. It's about setting those expectations, and we can't have all of our expectations met all of the time. And then so it's then really about prioritizing, isn't it? Like you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And being really conscious of the choices that we're making and not being the victim of them.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. So, Aly, just wrapping up, what are your rules to live by with budgeting? Are there any extras, or we exhausted them?
Yeah, no, there's some more.
There's more. There's more.
I'm a huge believer in, especially for women in this category, is leading with your head, not your heart. You can always have heart in there, but it always goes back to being conscious, taking control early. It's never too late. Don't spend more than you earn. Really simple one, but a lot of people do it. Credit is not your money, it's somebody else's. And if you've got the capacity, put a bit of extra into super and talk to people that you trust and have knowledge around this. Lean on them.
I love that. I think, and we've touched on it in the start of the webinar, but it's very much about talking to people. So sharing your stories, experience and knowledge, and helping other people, because the more we talk about it, the more we learn from each other. So I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I've learned that in my life and in my career as well, to really rely on, very trusted sources, because we're not in it alone. Somebody has experienced it or done it. And, I just want to share what I've been able to do and learn from that. And if somebody else can take that and make it better, just let me know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do very much love the making financial decisions with your head rather than your heart, a topic near and dear to myself. So it's great to see that.
And I think we all struggle with a bit of fear of missing out. And I think if we come to terms with that, that's where we can get in control of the head.
That's right. Yes. Human beings, it's just one of our faults about that. And yeah, you're right. It's just about managing that behaviour and moving up to the head rather than the heart. So, Aly, thank you so much. There's been some absolute gold in your talk today. And we're all very much looking forward to seeing you in a little while, so we can have some extra questions for you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Karen. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Aly. Bye.
Bye.
Hello, Deborah. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Karen. It's so great to be here.
Wonderful. So I was wondering if you could start by telling us the reasons why you decided to leave a career in financial planning and pioneer the field of behavioral money coaching?
I'd love to. So, as you know, as a financial professional, mostly we work with people day in and day out, trying to help them invest their money wisely and plan for the future, whether it's retirement planning or college education or whatever it is that the person feels is important to them. But it's all practically oriented. And to me, after a while, I began to see that I could spend all the time in the world and give the person the best possible advice and wonderful investment strategy. And yet they would come back year after year. And I would say easily 75% or more of my clients would pretty much be, they would save some, but then they'd always have something that they wanted to buy that would derail them, or they just couldn't quite get a handle on their budget or something. And so they didn't actually arrive at the place they wanted to be. And I was just very curious about that. It's sort of like, well, why would you spend all this time and money with me if you aren't actually going to follow the plan? And that's what I was thinking in my head. But with my clients, I was just more, well, okay, this year we'll do better, okay? And it's all right, don't worry about it. Because I've never felt it was appropriate to shame people or make them feel badly about what they did or didn't do, because in the end, it's their money, right? I'm sure that you've seen the same, right, Karen, to some degree?
Absolutely. I went through the same path myself, just having that real curiosity as to why people do what they do with money. And there's almost a sense of frustration for me that I really wanted to help these people, but doing it from an external, practical financial planning point of view was never going to work.
That's right. So, in the end, I finally just became very, very curious about what was really going on. And because I originally went to school to become a therapist and ended up switching directions, ironically, that behavioral side of who I am never really left. And so I started really doing some inquiry, and I even started interviewing a bunch of therapists, because at that time I was writing my first book, which was called Money Therapy. And it was so funny because every time I started talking about this with therapists, they would all just go, oh, wait a minute, we don't want to talk about money either. And we don't have any training or education on the behavioral side of money. So I eventually got to this place where I said, okay, what's going on here? Why is it that nobody wants to talk about the green elephant in the room? And eventually I began to realize that pretty much what we were encountering was the last taboo, and perhaps the greatest taboo, second to perhaps sex. And yet, we can talk about sex on public television till, the cows come home and nobody seems to matter, but don't bring money up. Boy, that's not okay. So, I'm sure you had a similar experience. So essentially what I decided after I wrote my first book, Money Therapy, is I said, this is enough. People deserve better, and we can do better for them. So I left the field. I sold my practice for a song, literally. Everyone thought I had lost my mind because I was going off to essentially pioneer a field that nobody had ever heard of, called money coaching and behavioral money coaching. And so essentially, for me, it was a matter of a greater purpose, and that I knew that the practical side of money alone just was insufficient to what people really needed. And I knew that the behaviors were running everything. I just didn't at that time know how or why. So that then sort of brought me into the field. And upon doing much research over many years, I ended up starting the Money Coaching Institute, and ultimately, as you know, left the field. And here we are today. And it's been wonderful. Not easy, but wonderful.
Yeah, I imagine there would have been a lot of challenges along the way, but I think it's wonderful that you've done it and just created this whole new career path and service that people can tap into, because it's so much needed. And you're right, it's I think, you know, we all talk about financial literacy and learning more about money, but it's just not enough, is it? It's really got to come from that behavioural side.
Well, and it's fascinating in the end, you know, that I feel like I've done much better work and helped far more people. I'm curious if the same is true for you, than I ever did as a financial planner or advisor. I never was a formal CFP in the U.S. For many years, you were just considered a financial advisor and did planning. But essentially, the work we do now is far more valuable to my clients than anything I ever did for the 20 years before this. What's your perspective about that?
Yeah, I would agree, Deborah. You know, I worked for over 20 years in financial services and 14 of those as a financial advisor, and it was very rewarding and I did love it. But I find the way that I work with clients now on the money coaching and the behavioural side of their money, it's just such a deeper level, and it actually is so meaningful and can give them so much more value than just the practical side of things. So I'll totally agree.
I'm so glad that you found your way to the work, because you're such a natural. So.
And I'm so glad that you pioneered it, so people like advisors like myself and other people that are interested in helping people in this way can actually do it. So yeah, big thank you to you.
You are so welcome.
So Deborah, I was wondering, could you explain to us, how is it that we can cultivate wealth from within us?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've discovered on my own journey. So I didn't come from money. I always joke and said I wasn't born with a silver spoon. Mine was plastic. And so I had to figure pretty much everything out myself, because my family was relatively poor and they didn't know anything about money because there was never any extra to do anything with. So the idea of financial planning, when I went into the field, my family just thought, they didn't even know what happened to me. They were like, what are you doing? This isn't what our people do. And I'm like, well, you know what? It's time for our people to change. And I think it's time for people worldwide to change, you know, because wealth is really not something that we externalize everything. We think that the value of things is what we have. But the true value of things is what we cultivate from within. And so if we work on the inside to cultivate our own meaning and our own value, not what the world says we're supposed to be, do, and have, but deeply reflect on, what do you value? What matters to you? And what is it that your gift, that you would like to take out into the world? And so when you cultivate that, and, you know, in money coaching, it's a bit of a excavation process, where we do the deeper work on the inside in order to manifest a different result or reality on the outside. But we tend to do it backwards. We're all about, let's plan for the assets and have all that external stuff handled. And then often people neglect the inner world. And I think that's entirely backward. I think that we need to cultivate this from within first. And that when you do that, you also get a better outcome, because it's built upon a structure that's meaningful to you, not what the rest of the world says should be meaningful to you and that you should do and you should have. And I think that a lot of our unhappiness in the global society is because we look out around at what everybody else is doing and having, and we think we're supposed to have it too. But who said that that's what we should want? And so I think it's important at this stage in our life that we start to reflect more deeply and create our own path that is more aligned with who we are and what would make us happy and what we value and the world we want to create and live in.
I love that. Yeah, doing the internal work first instead of doing it secondary or afterwards, and putting the external practical side as being first. Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. I know you talk a lot about one's having their own purpose. Can you tell us a bit more about how we can discover our own purpose and why passion is the necessary formula that we need?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Thank you, Karen, for asking it. I believe that every single human being on the planet is here for something that is meaningful and important to that human being, to their journey, and that we all have a greater purpose. You know, the great poet, philosopher Rumi says that, you know, it is as if a king has sent us to a country to perform a single task, and we perform 100 other tasks, but not the one we were sent to do. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but ultimately that one thing is our purpose. And the best way that we can begin to understand that is to look at what we've been drawn to. You know, what brings us joy? What makes us come alive? What do we feel compelled around and passionate about enough to say, yes, that's my thing, and I have this to offer. And I want to take that and seed that idea and that purpose and find some way to bring it to the world. And even if it's just one little pocket of the world, your neighborhood, your school, your community, it doesn't have to be grand. And that's the other thing. Why is it that we feel compelled to say that somehow if our purpose isn't something big and, you know, we're not saving the world, that it's not meaningful? I think that, you know, I remember once that there was a janitor in an elementary school that I went to, and he was an older African-American man, and he had the best attitude in the world, and he was always happy, and he was always saying something kind. And basically all he did was, you know, he cleaned the classrooms, and he swept the floors, and he washed the windows. And I just thought he was the most marvelous man because he was always cheerful and happy. And I thought to myself, if this man can be so happy doing that, then I too have to find some way to be that happy in the world. And even if it means that you're sweeping up the classrooms and cleaning, or, you know, whatever it is, it's like you bring your full self and your joy and your purpose to whatever it is. And when you do that, the best part of yourself comes alive. What if we lived in a world where we didn't say, yes, you need to spend 4 years at a minimum going and pursuing some educational path, hoping to become a professional, which we've both done, and, you know, I'm not sorry I did that. But today people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on education only to get out and to realize in their early 20s that they spent all that money, and they may or may not even want to do it or like what they're doing because they were too young to make that choice. So I think we really started pushing people to come up with careers when we should have thought more about purpose all along. And it's part of our goal, you know, as money coaches too.
Yeah, that's such an insightful thing, isn't it? Just really examining the path that we take as children through our childhood into, you know, going to school and then university and setting that path. You know, if we could go back and actually really spend time understanding, well, what our purpose is, you know, what makes our heart sing, because that's obviously what we're here to give out and share with the world. So yeah, that's wonderful. So Deborah, I know the title of what you were going to talk about today had sacred action in it. Could you share with us what you mean by sacred action?
So as you begin to reflect more on the inside, what it is that you're here for, and remember, it doesn't have to be grand, and it should be in alignment with your values and the vision, and something that feels completely authentic for you and who you are. You know, for example, think of all the people in the world who have the gift of music, but somebody told them along the way, well, you're never going to make any money as a musician, so don't do that, right? Go and be an accountant, which is a travesty, right? So sacred action is when you are giving your gift. And whether you're doing it for a career or you're doing it for the joy and that it brings joy to others, that's one form of sacred action. And so often when I'm working with a client, they'll say, well, that's all well and good, and I'm an artist, but there's no way I can feed my family as an artist. And I'll say, well, have you tried? And I will tell you that about 80% of the time, they gave up before they started. They were told it wasn't possible. You can't do that. You won't survive. You know, our parents are afraid for us. And so rather than encouraging people to do the thing and letting them develop mastery at that, you know, what do they say? It takes 10,000 hours or 10 years to become a master at anything. So if you notice that you have a child that has a gift at something, let them have the opportunity to explore that, and then don't discourage them from pursuing that, even if it means maybe they will not be wealthy. Maybe they're not going to be a doctor, lawyer, or Indian chief, but perhaps they'll have enough, because that's my belief, is that we will always have enough when we are giving our gift. And giving our gift is a sacred action, because when we are expressing our gifts, we're expressing spirit, or whatever you call it, because it doesn't really matter. And that part of us is the seed of that spirit. And that's why it's sacred. And, you know, we have to understand that not everybody has the same gifts, or if you configure those skills, talents, and abilities in your own unique way. As I did money coaching, for example, you know, there didn't have a name for what I saw needed to be done. So I had to create one. And I believe the seed of that possibility and that potentiality is actually inside of all of us. And sometimes it's following a movement, you know, that already has started, like you did with money coaching, and now you're having your own take on it, because everyone will express in their gift in their own way. You know, I've never felt like people needed to become a money coach or be trained by me so they could do it exactly like I do. Each person brings their own uniqueness, rightly so, to whatever it is that they're doing, and that is their gift. And when we are giving this, we are doing something sacred. It doesn't really matter if it's grand. Just find a way to, you know, whatever that spark is inside of you that's longing to express, that spark is not there for no reason at all. That spark needs to be ignited and given attention to and given air and spaciousness to be able to express. And when we do that, even if you have to have a job, okay, have a job in the meantime, but don't give up or let go of the thing that makes you sing. And when you do that, when you sing that song, when you give that gift or whatever it is, you're actually expressing part of the divine.
That's beautiful, Deborah. I could really resonate with what you were sharing with us. My father did the same thing. I wanted to be an artist. I was very creative, and said, you'll never make money from that. So I went to university and studied accounting. So I think the lesson that I take away from that is that, you know, I have 8 and 9-year-old boys, and yeah, to do what you're recommending, to just let them explore what makes them, you know, light up and explore that, no matter the financial consequences. So, yeah, thank you, Deborah, for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, your children will be so blessed to have you as their mother who says, you know, honey, if all we do is follow the money, you know, half the time in my work and our work, what I find is that after people do that, and they go and they find the money and they have the security. After a period of time, you just go, what am I doing this for? What, what does it really matter? It didn't get me what I wanted and what I truly desired. And then that expression, often that fire and that thing that was so deeply a part of your greater purpose becomes extinguished. And that's really, I think, the most unfortunate thing in the world. So I hope for everyone here that you get a chance to discover what that is for you. And if nothing else, just give it a voice and move toward it and see what happens.
That's beautiful. Now, Deborah, I understand that you're about to launch a new program. Can you share the details of that with our audience?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of the highlights. So I'm starting something called the New Money Movement. And it's new from the standpoint that it's certainly not about the practical side of money, at least on the front side. It's really more about helping people to deconstruct whatever the blocks or challenges are that are in their way and keeping them from being able to realize their greater potentiality. I think once that people understand this sort of inner exploration and discovery that we must, that's essentially the hero or heroine's journey. I'm a big Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell devotee, so to speak. And there is greatness inside of every human being that never has a chance to be seen. And I believe that as we create the space to understand that and to cultivate a relationship with that, that ultimately we won't need to worry about money in the way that we have in the past. The world is changing very, very quickly. And the world beyond COVID especially is going to look very different. And so what better time, since we're on this journey together and there's much happening. I think the world around us is in its own period of deconstruction, and then from there, transformation will be born. But we need to have another plan. We've been doing it this way since essentially the Industrial Revolution, and it hasn't worked out for us very well. Yeah, we've gotten more money and more stuff, but I don't know that we are happier humans. So let's start a new money movement and begin to cultivate a different relationship with money that is more in keeping with a greater truth, and that is not so focused only on the material world and being acquisitive and having more, bigger, better. So many people have a story inside of them, which is, I can't be, do, or have because I don't have the money. And I'm here to tell you that is not the truth. It is a lie that we've been fed, but not one that served us. And I do believe there's another opportunity that is available for all of us. So I hope you'll all join me.
So Deborah, how could people find out more about this?
The best way is I'll be launching this program in August, so we're a little premature now. But if you're interested, certainly you can email me. My website, first of all, is moneycoachinginstitute.com, and there is a contact form on there. If you're interested in becoming a part of the New Money Movement, simply send me an email. And when I am going to launch, I will be sending an email out to people. It's also going to be very inexpensive, and it will be group work, so that anybody who wants to jump on board and do this exploration and create a new way of being around money will be invited, regardless of what their economic situation is currently. So it'll have sort of an economic fairness associated with, so people of any walk of life will be able to join and participate.
Oh, Deborah, that's wonderful. Just giving access to so many people that perhaps in other ways couldn't afford to do things. So, yeah, it's beautiful. And when you say it's with the group work, I would like to share that, I've been trained by you, obviously, and trained to do the one-on-one coaching with clients, but also to do group coaching. And I find group coaching such a wonderful experience because they learn about themselves, but sometimes they learn about themselves through others and their experiences and sharing. And there's lots of often common themes among the people in the group. So I think there's such value in that collective work together.
Well, and Karen, as we talked before, it is my goal that you will be running the Australian group of the New Money Movement. So people can actually contact you directly to come on board there in Australia and participate with other Aussies. Not that it's necessary, because there will be one large group that is an international group. But I believe that we can have little pods, smaller pods by country, that will allow people to take leadership, such as yourself, who already are money coaches, and spread the new money movement in their own communities as well. So my hope is that you'll take that lead for the Australian population.
Absolutely. I would, the money movement is, it's something that's so important, and I think it's such a wonderful initiative from you. Deborah, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing what you have shared, and thank you for pioneering this field, because it's such important work for people. Now, I understand you're going to join us in a little while for questions and answers, so the audience can ask specific questions, and I'm sure there'll be plenty. So again, Deborah, thank you so much for your time and for all the wonderful work that you do with clients and with money coaches around the world.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Karen.
Bye, Deborah. So now I didn't introduce myself properly. I'm Karen Eley, and I'm a certified money coach and financial educator. So I actually help women who feel confused or overwhelmed with money matters to build financial competence and confidence. And I do this by taking them through a unique step-by-step coaching process that uncovers the deep-seated money blocks that are subconsciously holding them back, both personally and financially. Then with this awareness, I then assist my clients to move from financial confusion to financial clarity by providing the tools, the strategies, support, and everything they need to be fully financially empowered. You see, the thing is, women, we're incredibly resourceful and capable, but quite often lack the support, guidance, and confidence to build the financial backbone, that really strong financial foundation that we need and that we really desire. So, you see, I too previously experienced challenges with money and went through my own internal awareness journey myself. And as a result, I can now help others on their path to financial wellness and wholeness. So with my background in financial planning as a financial advisor, life coaching and money coaching, when combined all these all together, it actually brings a really unique perspective and experience to helping people develop a rich and fulfilling relationship with money. And my reason for creating this webinar, by bringing us all together to inspire other women like yourself watching this to feel more joy in their lives. And I believe that the more that we talk about and share our financial issues, our insights, our challenges, and absolutely our achievements, we can actually help each other and in turn create a movement and a vital shift in how we become better and kinder human beings in the world. That's just my small dream for us all. So that's a bit about me. Donny, could I get just you to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Donny Walford, the founder and managing director of two companies. One is Bottom Line and one is Behind Closed Doors. I've had an executive career across corporate and government. And I set up my business because I wanted to help women, in particular through my company Behind Closed Doors, in their leadership and professional development journey. One of the programs that we developed last year, because of my passion to bridge the gender pay gap and therefore the superannuation pay gap, or the superannuation gap, is the introduction of our Financial Education for Women program. I'm very happy to have two of my financial coaches facilitators with us today, which is Karen and Marissa. So I have a real passion to help women in their careers, but just as equally a passion to ensure that women do look after themselves financially. And I know that a lot of women are embarrassed about not understanding their finances, their personal finances. I had a 20-year career in banking and finance, so it's second nature to me, but I understand it's not second nature to women. But that's no excuse to not seeking support from others, particularly other women who want to help you, to understand the basics of budgeting and the basics of investing. And by doing it with others who can help and support you, it takes away that scary truth, I guess, that you have, or that inhibitions about finding out about your finances. So if you don't understand the basics of household budgeting and what's in your super account and what a mortgage is and how much you owe on a home loan, those sorts of things, they're basic. And even your spending habits, our Financial Education for Women program will go through all of those things and then step you through being able to set your own financial goals to ensure that by the time you do retire and there is lack of government pensions available, you'll be able to look after yourself for your future.
Thanks, Donny. Aly, could you now introduce yourself?
I think you'll need to unmute Aly.
Apologies.
Sorry, Aly.
That's okay. I had an unstable connection also. So I'm Aly Garrett, the founder of All In Advisory. We started in October 2018, but I would say we are a 25-year startup. We exist to empower business owners to achieve their why and goals through innovation and technology, future-proofing and thriving with them. Our mantra is all in or all out. There is no halfway. Personally, I'm a cloud enthusiast, a virtual CFO for many of my clients' businesses, a fellow CA, tax agent, and mum of 3. I've also recently celebrated winning Startup Firm of the Year for All In Advisory at the Accountants Daily Awards, also Small Business Advisor and Principal of the Year at the National Women in Finance Awards, and one of the top 50 women in accounting through Practice Ignition. And I believe those recognitions come from an enormous amount of hard work over that 25-year career that I want to be able to provide to my clients and my community to lift them up and to educate and empower them to be the best financial versions of themselves they can be.
Aly, that's wonderful. Yeah, it's so inspiring. Deborah, could you now introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Deborah Price, and I'm the odd American in the group. I'm the CEO and founder of the Money Coaching Institute. And basically, I also had a over 20-year career in the financial services as a wealth advisor and money manager. And I left the field over 20 years ago. So I've been now 20 years with the Money Coaching Institute, which was essentially something that I started out of a deep passion to want to help people to realize their greater potential, personally and financially. Because one of the things that I've learned in my career is that often, because people don't have the financial foundation that they need to be able to move forward in the world and express their gifts and create for themselves, that the potential of a human being literally gets lost. It never gets realized. And to me, that was one of the greatest tragedies of any human life. And so after working on the practical side of money, I realized that the behavioral side was completely missing, and that wasn't okay with me. I knew that the emotions and behaviors were driving all of those decisions. And I also knew that most of us didn't get what we needed in terms of modeling or, parents that knew what they were doing, because this is a deeply entrenched multi-generational issue, and it's global. I have coaches in 33 countries now, and I can tell you that this is not an American thing or an Australian thing. This is a human thing. And humanity is my religion. I'm very, very interested in helping to help people to rise from whatever place that they are now, and to help them realize that there's something greater within them, that if they could just figure out how to handle the money piece, it's not the only thing, but it is one of the most significant things that help us to climb that ladder of self-actualization that Maslow helped us to understand long ago as a psychologist. And so this is my purpose and this is my passion. And I'm just so happy that Karen has come along and she's a part of that. And she's a fabulous coach. So we're really happy to be with you here today.
Thanks, Deborah. We're really happy to have you all the way from Northern California as well. Marissa.
It's a long ride.
Marissa, could you now please introduce yourself?
Thanks, Karen. So my name's Marissa Schultz. I'm founder and managing director of Rise High Financial Solutions, which is a mortgage broking and finance business aimed at empowering our clients to achieve their financial and lifestyle goals. I started the business in 2011 after spending many years working in corporate banking for two of the big four in Australia, and realised that it was important for me to start my own business in order to put my clients first and make sure that they were my first priority. So it's been a really fun journey building the business. We've now got a team of 22 in the business, and it's just so wonderful being able to work with people, explore their short, medium and long-term goals and help them to achieve their financial dreams. At the time that I started the business, I'd already been a property investor for over a decade, and I'd seen firsthand what property investment can do for you and how it can help you to achieve wealth and help give you financial freedom that will allow you to make choices that you want in your life. So that's also a big passion of ours, to help people to not only save money on their mortgage, but also look at how they can manage their money better and use property investment as a way to build the wealth that will give them the choices and freedom that they desire long term. I've also got a really strong passion and interest in financial literacy for women. I think that more women need to be better empowered with better financial literacy and education, so that they can have the confidence to make the right decisions for themselves and their family. And so I'm really excited to be part of this, because anything we can do to empower women through financial literacy is really important.
Thank you, Marissa. Well, I've just realised between the five of us, we've all had over 20 years experience. So right here in this room, there's over 100 years of experience coming right at the audience, which is fantastic. So I wanted to kick off the discussion panel by talking about why now is the time to be more engaged and take control of our money. Would anyone like to start?
I think it's always important to take control of your own financial situation. In my line of work, too many times or too often I see couples that basically put the responsibility of the money management on one person in the relationship, whether that be the male or the female. And the problem with that, of course, is that you can find yourself in a very vulnerable position later on in life if you lose your partner through death or illness, or if you lose your partner through a relationship breakup. So my theory is that it's really important for every single individual, every single adult, to take an active and proactive approach to managing their money, to understanding their debt, to understanding their income and expenses, their assets and liabilities, so that they have the ability to make the decisions that are right for them. So I think it's always a good time to manage your own money. And now more than ever, you know, we find ourselves in an environment where, you know, there's never been more access to information. And sometimes that can be a little bit overwhelming, but at the same time, it is empowering if you get the right information that can actually give you the knowledge that you need and the help that you need to build that confidence so that you can actually make the right financial decisions for yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm a true believer of it's never too early. You know, I talk to my little girl, you know, from the age of 5, and she's now 13, around financial choices and decisions and making conscious choices around money. Because a lot of people do put that responsibility onto others and then play the blame game. And it really is up to us to educate. But the earlier that you start making consistent, conscious choices about your finances, you will find that you will move forward and step up that financial ladder and be able to achieve the financial things that you want to achieve. And from that, you actually get that little bit of, wow, I can do this, that quick win that then allows you to keep going for those bigger items, those bigger things that you are wanting to achieve in your life. But it's certainly around making those head choices, not those heart choices, and actually understanding the consequences of each and every one of those choices financially.
It's interesting that you would say that, Aly, because what we find, interestingly enough, in the money coaching world is that most people don't make their decisions from their head at all. In fact, you know, from a neuroscience standpoint, you know, we have 3 brains, and the original brain is more instinctively driven. And so the more fearful that we are, the more that we tend to make decisions from a place of fear and or scarcity and or desire. So the instinctive brain is wired for desire, and it tends to make us human wantings. And that's actually one of the problems in society, is that we want everything and we want everything now. And, you know, and that leads to dynamics that put us at risk. And then the emotional brain has all those old files in the archives of the past. And a lot of those, for many people, are filled with pain and shame and challenge from our family of origin. And when people don't have access, or they don't know how to get access to those dynamics, what happens is that we become triggered either at an instinctive or emotional level. And that gives us, it creates a temporary downtime for the thinking brain to come on board and actually help us make a rational and logical decision. So in fact, most people don't realize that their brain is actually designed more for desire than it is for the more practical aspects of money. And from the behavioral standpoint, we realize that most people really know they should be doing more, but they don't understand and don't have control of their own brain's operating system. So one of the things that's so important is to help people realize that there are strategies that they can take that will help them move away from the instinctive and emotional and back into their thinking brain pretty readily. And also just to heal some of those old patterns from childhood that, you know, caused us to feel somehow that we were not worthy or not enough, or created some sort of pain or wounding that has taken on a life of its own in our adult life. So
amazing.
We have a saying here, Deborah, not sure if it's worldwide or not, but your life partner is not your financial plan.
That's right.
And unfortunately, too many women, in my experience, think either a great inheritance or their partner is going to be their financial plan. And too many times I've seen just what Marissa quoted: either there's a breakup in the relationship, or unfortunately one of your partner dies, and you're already grieving that loss. Why on earth you want to put yourself under that excess stress on top of the grieving. A lot of women don't know the passwords of bank accounts. They don't know how to pay invoices, and this is even when there's something called a check. Write a check out to pay an invoice or a bill. Now online, it makes it harder if you can't access your bank accounts. And just to me, they're basic things that you need to know and you need to be operating. So I totally agree with what you're all saying, but in particular, Marissa, most women that I come in contact with leave the banking up to their and anything related to finances to their partners. So, and the question Karen asked is now the time? Well, I say that it's never too late. Doesn't matter if you're in your 50s or 60s. Learn about your personal finance. Or even your 70s, 80s, I don't care what the age is. But obviously, if you're learning to save and invest at an earlier age of, around the 20s and your 30s, you're going to be in a much stronger position with your own personal financial wealth than you would be if you started in your 50s and 60s. But it's never too late to start.
Yeah, that's a great point, Donny. And, realistically, the perfect time to be engaged and in control and doing things about your finances was 10 years ago. So there's that saying, if you want a shade, you need to have planted a tree 10 years ago. But the second best time is right now. So, and I think what's also important, if you are in that stage where you're kind of kicking yourself and say, yeah, I should have done this 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I think a really important thing to do is to firstly forgive yourself and just say, look, I'm in this situation now. Could I have done things better in the past? Yes, I probably could, but did I have the tools and resources available to me? Most likely not. So go through a process of forgiving yourself so then you can actually move forward and make some meaningful, long-lasting changes and make the best of where you are and maximise your full financial potential going forward rather than looking backwards.
Well said, Karen.
Can I just add something to that, Karen? Because I think one of the things that we haven't talked about is financial abuse, because unfortunately there are a lot of women that find themselves in positions of financial abuse where their partner is actually so controlling that they won't actually allow their partner to actually have access or any knowledge of anything that's going on financially. And unfortunately this happens so frequently, and the person that's in the position of being, financially abused really lacks the confidence to reach out and get help. But amongst this room of wonderful women, it's just shows that there is so much help out there for people to actually take the first step in building their confidence and learning about financial management. Because there was a recent study done and it basically said that 1/3 of people considering separating from their partners weren't going to do it because they were scared of the financial issues. And I just think, well, if your lack of confidence with managing money is crippling your financial decisions to that effect, where you don't want to be with your partner but you feel like you have no other choice because of the financial situation that you're in, then obviously there's a problem there that needs to be addressed. So I think what this is all about is about empowering people so that they can make the right decisions for them in their life without having to be trapped or feel trapped because of their financial position or their lack of financial understanding.
Yeah, actually, it may be the same there in Australia, but in the US, I ran a pilot program for domestic violence center in the Bay Area. The number one reason that women stay in abusive relationships, domestic violence, is fear of financial survival. So, whether they're being financially abused or abused emotionally, physically, or otherwise, the money issues can become a huge trap for women and children, and occasionally even for men, but 90% or more is obviously women. So there's all kinds of reasons for us to really try to help women to understand their own fears around becoming financially powerful. Because at an emotional and behavioral issue, I'm sure every woman on this panel knows that when you become powerful, there are also consequences for that, right? And that a lot of women are afraid of having that much power, and yet to maintain the position where you are being controlled versus becoming empowered is an untenable position that is very likely going to become a problem at some time down the line. And therefore, who of us could afford to take that risk, knowing of the potential, especially with money issues being the #1 cause of divorce, right?
Yeah, that's such a great point, Deborah. Thank you. So the next thing that I wanted to throw out to the panel was just to get your take on what we can actually learn or take away from the recent COVID, pandemic and crisis when it comes to our relationship with money and the actions that we should be taking in our financial lives.
If I can just step in here, I would, the way I like to see it is an opportunity to take stock, to look at how we've done things in the past and how we might be able to make it better. It's shown everybody that we live in a really fragile economy and everybody relies on each other. So we need to have kind of plan B, C, D, E, F, G, and we actually do need to think about it. So often, if you have a good income, we don't put insurance on it, we don't protect it, but should we? Is that something we should think about doing? And so for me, it was really a great time for the businesses that I work with and the clients that I work with to take stock, see it as an opportunity and see how we might be able to pivot and move forward and actually look at how we can take better control, but also that cash is king and that we need to be able to have what we call a war chest of reserves, so that if the worst happens, there's something there to back us up and be a buffer. That's certainly the things that I've learned during this pandemic.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with what Aly said. And I think from a financial perspective, this has been a reminder that things do go wrong and that unexpectedly you could lose your income and something can happen that would impact the financial well-being of your family. So having that reserve, that emergency fund that will actually see you through 3 to 6 months of reduced income is so important. And I always, we're always stressing to our clients, pay yourself first. So that's about making sure that you're putting aside a certain amount of your income, for emergencies like we've just experienced, and also, for investing in your future. So I think it's, when times are good, it's really easy to forget to pay yourself first. And Australians do have the habit of just spending every dollar that they make, and sometimes spending more than every dollar that they make, which is why credit cards do so well with the banks. But really, this is about, if we've learned anything over the last few months, is that your income is not guaranteed and your employment is not guaranteed. Things can go wrong, whether you're self-employed or employed by an organisation. It's really important to have a buffer of savings that will actually support you in times of reduced employment, in times of hardship, where you can actually dip into in the case of an emergency.
Yeah, and I think just kind of in addition to the financial strategies that people really need to consider in order to protect themselves for the event of, whether it's this or a recession or whatever, I think COVID in particular has brought forth this idea that in this time of going inward and, being in lockdown, and it looks like many of us are going to be in lockdown longer. Fortunately, you guys aren't, it sounds like. But this idea that you use this time, is this a crisis or is this an opportunity, as Aly was saying? And is there some part of yourself that you didn't yet let have a chance to be expressed? Is there a book inside of you? Are you an artist and you can paint and maybe sell your paintings? Are you a musician who could suddenly produce some new music that you could then go online and sell? Because we live in a world today where you don't have to have someone else give you permission to live your dream. You can actually find a way to do it now, and it's much easier now than it's ever been before. So I think this is going to give rise to a lot of creativity and innovation. We're already seeing innovation. What's inside of you that still longs to be expressed, that can actually give you additional income? And even if it's not about the income, maybe you have enough income from investments or other kinds of insurances that you have. Maybe it's just a time to open up your dreams and your passions and see what's inside of you that is bringing forth the new opportunity that would allow you to feel like something good came of this. You know, is there a silver lining or a blessing in disguise that you could tap into and create from? Because I think that's the most wonderful thing about human beings, is that we are incredibly resourceful and adaptable and creative. Let's bring that forward during this time.
Lovely words, Deborah. What I've loved about the COVID is exactly what you were describing. What are the opportunities rather than what are all the bad things? And one thing I've really loved is seeing people looking out for others more than they had before, families doing things together. But what I've noticed speaking to all of my clients and colleagues around Australia is that people have saved more because they're not going out and spending a lot more at the bottle takeaway delivery though. But what they've really saved on is the amount of times they went out for meals and instead having home meals and family meals and sitting down together and enjoying what we probably all grew up with. But even in business, we've all seen that we really don't need to get on a plane every week, which is something that I did, and it was very tiring but really expensive. So a lot of our credit cards are showing the benefits of not jumping on a plane all the time. I'm sure that if we looked at our personal expenses, there's other areas where we're probably not spending as much. And the thing coming out of COVID in recovery and forward is, well, what did we do that in saying what Marissa was saying about paying yourself first, what did we do differently during COVID that we can maintain the discipline post-COVID that will put that savings away for us? We'll be able to spend money on those creative activities perhaps, or invest some and play with some, rather than as Marissa said, we just spend everything. So I think if we learn the disciplines through COVID and just carry them through post-COVID would be a good thing to do.
Probably just one more opportunity that I just thought about, putting my mortgage broker hat on, is that interest rates are at historical lows. And COVID has meant, or is meaning, that interest rates are going to stay low for some time. So now is a really great time to be paying down some debt, because interest rates are not going to get lower than where they are now. So now's a really great time to be consolidating, taking stock of what what your assets and liabilities are, paying down some debt, planning on, like Donny said, trying to continue some of the habits that you've had during COVID that have actually been really good on the bottom line. But definitely it's a great opportunity to be getting on top of that debt now as well.
That's a good point, Marissa, because last week my bank sent me a letter electronically just saying that we've reduced your mortgage payments, and it worked out to about $100. And if you'd like to keep them at the same, go through this process. And I think it would be so easy for people to just take the extra $100, but so much better to keep your payments at the same and knock that interest down, but also knock your loan off quicker. So if you've been able to cope to this point, surely you could either pay a bit more off or at least keep your payments at the same. So it's a good point.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is going on because they want people to take the extra $100 or whatever it is and stimulate the economy. It's so fascinating that us financial professionals are trying to get people to get a handle on their spending, and the government is trying to get people to spend. It's like, what's wrong with this picture,
Yeah,
But
completely.
the other thing is, Karen, I don't know if you'd like to talk about this, but think about how low, the stock market is, and the opportunities from the standpoint of buying low right now for many really good investments is something for people to consider. If you haven't gotten in, not to become highly speculative or anything, but do you have many people coming to you right now for investment advice at a time when prices are low?
Absolutely, and probably the prices were quite low a couple of months ago. We have had a significant rally, not to say that I'm surprised actually that we have rallied up so high, so it's more than likely that there'll be another fall. But yes, I absolutely had more clients contact me saying it's now a good time to buy, and it's sort of like if we can shift from buying clothes and shoes and other things to actually buying shares and investments and investing in our future, it would all help so much, such significant. And I guess I was almost in a fortunate position that back in December, it was around Christmas time last year. At Christmas time, we spend a lot more money and things like that. I was quite conscious of it, and I was like, I'd made a very firm decision that for the next 6 months, so from the 1st of January to the 30th of June, I'm nearly there, I'm not going to buy any clothes. I've got a wardrobe full of clothes, and I'm not going to go to the shop to buy any clothes. So COVID's kind of, and the lockdowns kind of helped me out from that retail. It's quite fortuitous for me not being able to, it took the temptation away. But what I can share is that I haven't missed it. And, there was a few times where I had that kind of niggle, but it really just making that conscious decision about, no, I'm not going to spend money in that area for 6 months and see how that goes. And I completely haven't missed it. And the thing is, the crisis that we've all gone through, crises aren't new. So it was only, 12 years ago we had the GFC. 2000 we had the tech wreck. Before that, the oil crisis. So the share market does go up and down, and we experience these things on a regular basis. What I see though is that those crises aren't the thing that wears down our financial results. It's more around the decisions we make with the money day to day. They have a much greater negative impact on our net wealth and where we are financially than any market prices that go and then come back up. So that's probably what I took away from this. So does anyone have anything else? I think everyone's had some very varied, different perspectives, so it's been fantastic to share those. Before I move to the next topic, would anyone like to add anything?
There's just one little thing that I think is important, which is that, worldwide, one of the things that we're hearing is how many people are suffering from depression, and they've been scared, they don't know what's going to happen, the future feels very uncertain. And so often when people feel depressed, they will head toward retail therapy. And so just to be aware that when you shop, especially online, is so easy and so accessible, that often what you're getting is a hit of dopamine. And dopamine is essentially a neurotransmitter that is a chemical compound that literally gives you a temporary feeling of euphoria. And we need dopamine to survive, but it is one of those things that we have to be careful of because it's a form of self-medicating. And so just be aware that there are other things that you can do to get some positive hormones and endorphins and chemicals that are going to make us feel good or feel better. And that shopping and or any other kind of more speculative investing or anything like that actually can spur on addictive tendencies. And in many ways, I think money is the addiction of our time. It's so fascinating to me that when they opened up certain parts of different places, the first thing that you saw were all these massive lines in front of various, big stores, whether it's Target or a shopping mall or whatever. And I found that really sad, that after everything we've been through, the first thing that people just want to do is go out and shop. And that's an indicator that we're trying to, sometimes you go because you just need something, but ask yourself, am I doing this to feel better? And is this going to give me a temporary high? because most people will say they do get that blissed out feeling when they shop, but it's temporary. And then you get the bill and you don't feel so happy. So just know that this is a neurobiological issue. And if we really just stop and understand that these are tendencies that are not serving us, and really reflect, as some of you have talked about, is this something that you're about to buy that you really need? Or is this going to cause you to have more debt and ultimately less financial freedom? And I think now is a particular time to reflect on that a little more deeply.
Thanks, Deborah. Yeah, that is a great insight for those women that do have that tendency to fill a void with shopping. I know I've certainly been there myself. So we've got a very special group of women here. It's only reflecting on after I'd actually put the lineup together of the speakers, is that we have a collection of women here that have all actually now working in a business that we're truly passionate about. So, you know, we push back on the, you know, this is what we should do. And we've all come from traditional backgrounds, whether it be in banking and finance, or well, actually they've all been banking and finance. And, you know, we've just all decided that we want to create our own path and have made that conscious decision to live for our purpose and what lights us up. And I was just wondering if we could go around and actually share our experiences, maybe what you've learned, what the results been, what have been your challenges, or anything that you want to share with women listening to this that are sort of sitting in their employment or career or business and saying, it's not giving me that joy, I don't feel fulfilled, and have the aspirations to go out and take that leap like the five of us have.
I think for me, I'd worked for people for nearly 25 years, and I felt like I had this corporate veil. I could never really be me. There was elements of me, but not always the full me. And I felt like I had the handbrake on because people just kept stopping me because I just wanted to keep going forward. I had all these great ideas and really felt like there was change happening. I wanted to kind of grasp all of these opportunities, but I just kept feeling like the handbrake was on. So my decision to move into my own business was literally taking the handbrake off and being brave and courageous enough to do it. And it's a roller coaster. I mean, I'm very early on my journey and I've already experienced quite a few things, and including a pandemic, which, you know, we've actually grown from. Thankfully, we're in a really great industry that allowed us to do that. But, you know, I think the things that I've learned is that there's an incredible amount of joy and freedom in running my own business, in making those decisions. It does come with its stressful moments, but I think if you have the community and the support around you to lean on, to guide you, you know, that it's just the smallest component, but I love to focus on the stuff that I'm passionate about and the joy around that. And for me, it was really around, I had this dream and putting some plans in place and actually doing it. I think so often we think about things and we want to do it, but those people that actually get in and actually do it and take those actions, even if it's just one step in front of the other, that is where you can find your greatest joy. And for me, it has been an amazing experience, and I'm just so looking forward to what's ahead.
For me, I made the decision to start my own business when I was heavily pregnant with my first child. But there were multiple reasons for wanting to start my business. And probably one of the main drivers for me was that I did get to a point working in commercial banking where I found that the values of the organization were often conflicting with my own personal values. And it became very clear to me after many years that, you know, banks are always going to put shareholders before customers. And that's, you know, that's what they need to do. That's their organization. But for me, I really struggled with that because I wanted to put my clients first. So I think when you're finding yourself in an organization where your values are in conflict, it's really hard to remain passionate about what you're doing. And I really wanted to be passionate about what I wanted, you know, what I was doing every day. So for me, that was a big driver to get out and start my own business. And I found that, you know, yes, definitely it's a roller coaster when you are starting your own business, but the freedom that you get and the you know, the what it fills you up with so much joy to be able to deliver on something that you know is hugely valuable to the people that you're serving and be able to make a real positive difference in their life, I think it's definitely worth it. Yes, there are times when it's a little bit stressful. Yes, there are times when it's hard, but I've had great joy out of being able to serve our clients in a way that feels really good to me, in a way that fits with my values and morals. And not only, you know, over time, it's not only been helping the clients, it's been really satisfying, but it's also been really rewarding growing my team and being able to help other people to develop really great careers that they're really passionate about, and, you know, give back in a big way and be really internally rewarded, not only financially but also internally rewarded by what they're doing. And so I think there's just so much value in taking that leap, and it is scary because I'm a very calculated person, so leaving that six-figure income at the bank to start something that was completely unknown is really, really hard. And then when the business got busier and my husband had to leave his six-figure income to come into the business, that was another really hard point for us. But definitely it's been worth it 100%. So yeah, definitely recommend pursuing your passion and finding something that you love doing, because when you love doing it, it doesn't feel like hard work.
Definitely.
So as both Karen and Marissa know, the reason I set up Behind Closed Doors was to keep women in corporate world. I really wanted to see more women achieve executive roles, and the whole reason for Behind Closed Doors was to keep you there, support you and encourage you, but particularly support you to stay there so that I could build a bigger pool of women available for board roles, which was my ultimate vision, to get a lot more diversity, particularly gender diversity initially, but true diversity onto Australian boards. But the reason I set up my business over 14 years ago was exactly what Aly was saying, that everywhere you worked and the higher you got, the more people wanted, and boards even wanting to put handbrakes on you. And you had such great ideas, and everyone thought of all the reasons why you shouldn't do something, not all the reasons why you should. So I follow the 3 F's principle in my business, and I think we've already heard a few of them, but freedom, flexibility and fun. I'm sure you can't say those same 3 words in working for someone else. And Marissa, everyone said to me, starting my business initially, you know, wasn't I scared about doing that? And I think when you're building businesses for everybody else, you know you can do it. If you can do it for everyone else, surely you can do it for yourself. Surely if you're doing it your way, and looking after the client, and do we make mistakes? Absolutely. And those mistakes hurt because they hurt your own hip pocket, and a lot of time and energy you can't get back. But that's part of growth. And when you're in your own business, you learn really quickly by those mistakes, and try not to make the same mistakes twice. But there's nothing like the freedom and flexibility of running your own gig, and also the success, that feeling of success, though dopamines, instead of going retail shopping, Deborah, you can get those every single minute of the day. And Marissa, when you build a team and you see your team grow and develop, and they add flavour to your business that you're not adding personally, it's all beautiful stuff. And whilst I've always loved developing people, it's when it's your own business and you're seeing that development, there's something different about that sense of satisfaction. So yeah, would I ever go and work for someone again? Absolutely not. I do get my jollies by being on a number of boards where I am around the decision-making table with some other awesome directors and very different industry sectors. So if I didn't have my board work, I'd miss it. I would. But I get the best of both worlds, running my own business and sitting on boards.
That's great. Well, for me, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been self-employed most of my adult life. I have had some experiences working for major Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies while I was a financial advisor. But I have found that and it looks like it's true for everybody here, that the minute somebody tries to control me or stifle me, I'm just like, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. And that's why one of the reasons I left the financial services industry as well is I was working for Merrill Lynch, and they put out a mandate, which was you couldn't take any new clients on who had less than $250,000 in investable assets. And I said, I refuse to do that. I have a lot of women clients who don't have nearly $250,000 yet, but my job is to help them get there. And if you're going to tell me that I can't have those people because they don't have enough, I can't work for you anymore. And I left. That wasn't the only reason, but just the idea that, everybody deserves to have financial advice. You shouldn't have to come in with such a big amount of money initially and feel, and not to be worthy of that because you don't have enough was inconceivable to me. So, and then, the Money Coaching Institute, I started basically with a prayer and a song. And it was a field, the behavioral side of money, nobody talked about it. It was non-existent. So it was a little scary. I was a single mom. I had a little 6-year-old daughter at the time. And I don't really recommend that people pioneer a field by themselves. It was not easy. But, I look at it now and it's kind of a miracle. And I do believe that once you stake a claim to something and you said, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to be about, and I'm trying to make a difference in the world, and so come what may, that there is something at a spiritual level where you start to get cooperation and support. I don't know if you felt that. I bet you all have, but the sense of, I really can't fail. It may not always be easy and it could be scary, but once you stake a claim, there is something quite magical that can happen where you can feel that you will be supported, because there need to be more people who are willing to step out and do what needs to be done. And if more people did that, imagine what our world would look like. So I'm just really proud to be a part of this group and to meet all of you and see what you've all done with each of your lives and the difference that you're making. And I know that Miss Karen is also making a huge difference. Karen, unmute yourself.
There we go. So thank you, Deborah. That was beautiful insight. Going around and listening to all of your backgrounds and stories and your journeys, there's nothing there that any of you said that I couldn't relate to personally myself, having gone through similar journeys as you. Like Marissa, I started in one of the big 4 banks over 20 years ago, and the value misalignment. And but I think for me, it was really about being a financial advisor. I absolutely loved what I did, but I just felt like it wasn't my true calling. Whereas doing the money coaching and doing the internal financial relationship work it just really makes my heart sing. And it was like, what Donny was saying before, it's just about fun. Like I don't go to work, I go and play. It's just fun, and it just doesn't feel like work at all. So for any of you out there that are thinking about, it's just the perfect time to be thinking, are you living, the most fulfilling, rewarding life that you could be? And it's not necessarily going and starting your own business. It might be changing career or doing something that you're really passionate about. So doesn't need to be, taking that leap like we have and starting your own business. It could be just, studying or relearning or reskilling to do something that you're really passionate about and really love. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of you. I think it's been a wonderful discussion, and I know that the women listening have got huge value out of it. I'm going to conclude now. Is there anything anyone else would like to wrap up with first? No, we've all said enough.
Thank you, Karen, for putting this together, and best wishes to all of you.
Yeah, and
yes, thank you.
Deborah, all thoughts to you and your American colleagues, and we'd love to hook up again if this is helpful to everybody.
Absolutely. We shall definitely do that. Thank you.